a lot about choices and how many possible choices there are to do things and the best choices and things like that. And that led us into the idea of combinatorics and looking at ways to group things. Well, grouping things involves a lot of calculation, so I wanted to take some time to show you guys how you can use Desmos, everybody's favorite calculator, in order to do these. So we're going to start out with factorials and talk a little bit about what a factorial is and how you use Desmos to do it. So a factorial is when you have n things and you're going to choose to do something with those n things. So how many different ways can I have 8 different toppings on my sundae? Now, the factorial operator is that explanation point. And basically what that means is that if you were to have, say, 6 factorial, that's the same as saying 6 times 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. So there are 720 different ways to arrange that. You can see how Desmos uses that operator rather than having to type out all of those different things. Now you can use Desmos very quickly in that you'll note I have this expression here which is n factorial. I also have a slider added down here. When I typed in n factorial, it gave me the option to add the slider. So let's say I had 10 things instead of 6 things. And add in 10, and that shows me how many different possible ways there are to arrange those things. And now that's when we are taking all of things, all n things, and saying it again and again and again, to arrange them. And that would be a factorial. So sometimes we're going to change it a little bit. We don't want to choose all n things. That leads us into permutations. Permutation occurs when you have n things, but you're only going to choose r of them. So I might have, say, 7 learners, and I want to choose 3 of them to put in a group. What's different about a permutation is that the order matters. So if you think about the equation for a permutation, n factorial, the number I have, divided by n minus r factorial. What this is doing is taking the number you would normally calculate with the factorial and taking out any duplicates that would occur. However, when a permutation, order matters a lot. So if I have 7 learners and I want to group them in groups of 3, what a permutation is saying is that those different groups of 3, say Bob, Joe, and Sue, versus Sue, Joe, and Bob, those are 2 different groups. So we only divide out when there's a few of the duplicates in there. So what that means is, let's say I had 7. I'm going to use my slider again. And I'm going to put them in groups of 3 where the order matters. Like, I'm going to put them in groups of 3, president, vice president, and secretary. I'm going to change both my sliders, and you're going to see that it calculates that for me. 210 possibilities if I have 7 learners, and I'm going to put them in groups of 3 where the order matters. Now, sometimes the order doesn't matter, which leads us into the last thing, which is combinations. So in a combination, you still have n things, and you're going to choose r things. But this time the order doesn't matter. What that means is that Joe, Bob, and Sue versus Bob, Sue, and Joe, that's the same grouping. The combination formula has an extra r factorial down in the bottom. What that's doing is dividing out the duplicates. It's taking out the instances when you have Joe, Bob, and Sue, and Bob, Joe, and Sue. It's taking out those extra ones. Now again, you're going, well, how do I use this with my sliders? How do I make this go a little bit faster? Well, again, I have my n and r sliders. So let's say I have 10 this time, and I'm going to put them in groups of 4, where the order doesn't matter. I just want them in project groups of 4. Then Desmos does the calculations for me, and we get 210. Let's say instead I wanted to put them in groups of 5. I could change my r. There are 252 possible ways to have a combination of those learners. Now this was really just an activity to show you how you can use Desmos to do these. We had the presentation that you guys should be looking at to help you figure out how you can discriminate between combinations and permutations. Again, this was more about the calculations. If you don't want to use the handy dandy sliders, you can always go ahead and type these things in. So let's say we were going to do the problem we just did. which is 10 factorial divided by 5 factorial times 10 minus 5 factorial, factorial. You can again get the same answer. The sliders sometimes save you some time, and you can do multiple problems one after the other. A quick reminder about factorials though. Let's say you were going to actually do this, that math. You were going to do 10 minus 5 yourself. 10 minus 5 is 5, so you would automatically want to write 5 factorial again. Keep pushing shift. You'll notice that it gives you a, oh god, I don't understand, warning label. That's because you can't have the numbers right next to each other. It needs an operator between the factorial and the 5. So if you add in the multiplier or you use parentheses, that'll work. And you end up with the same answer. So now you guys know how to use Desmos to help you do those calculations, and we will have no troubles with our permutations, combinations, and general groupings with factorials.